Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I go by the name of X-Priest Tobin. You can find me on Twitch. Sometimes I'll stream there. Real name in real life is Blake, but that's not all that important. I wanted to start a sort of a time-lapse channel here on YouTube just to contribute to the overall Planet Coaster community. I have some familiarity with simulation games and theme park tycoon and sort of simulation games in general. I played Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2 extensively in my formative years, but have since sort of dropped off. I did spend some time with Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, but not enough. But Planet Coaster has piqued my interest, and I am also a very, very big theme park fan in general. I love reading up on theme park history, talking about park theory. It's just something that really interests me, so I decided, hey, if I'm going to play this game, I might as well do some time-lapse and share it with the community. I don't claim to be a professional. I don't claim to be the greatest one out there. I'm pretty much learning, and that's also a big reason of why I want to put this stuff up, is to get some feedback from the community out there. So if you have comments, criticisms, I'd love to hear them. If you think my stuff's great, great. If you think it sucks, that's fine too. I'm sure a lot of it isn't. I know a lot of it is not perfect, but hey, that's part of why I do this. I just kind of want to work through it, put it out there, and see what other people have to say. I guess I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing at the moment in the game, what you're seeing here. There's a little website on the internet called themeparkinsider.com. It's a really great website for learning about, it's a good source for learning about what's going on in the theme park industry. And they have a little discussion forum there, and over on Theme Park Insider, we actually have a competition called Theme Park Apprentice. And what Theme Park Apprentice is it's essentially run like the Apprentice reality TV show. So every week you get a new challenge, and then at the end of the week someone gets cut, they're basically fired, and you move on. My proposal won the 6.1 season. We're on season 8. I'm a judge in there right now. And essentially my idea for a park it's called Realms of Imagination, and it's the idea of, if you were to take all the Disney heroes and villains and shove them into one park and have them fight over a park, what would it be like? I'm not going to get into the particulars of it right now. I will put a link in the video to the various threads and the various discussion forum posts that relate to what I'm talking about here. So I figured the best way to actually do this, just to save my poor computer processing power and computing power, is to break this up into lands. So the land I'm working within right now is known as the Shadowlands, and it's essentially, the idea behind it is all the Disney villains that you would come to know throughout your life, they all live in this sort of fantastical realm known as the Shadowlands. And they live there and they hang out there, and it's just this sort of dirty, spooky place where all these nefarious characters live. So that's why you see me right here. I'm putting up a couple of little gravestones, faux gravestones. We don't have gravestones in the game yet, but that's what I'm doing here. So the idea behind the Shadowlands is it's a place for all of the Disney villains to gather and hang out and essentially plot all of their evil doings in one sitting. So that's the idea behind it. What I'm working on here at the moment is the queue to the Escape from Bald Mountain roller coaster attraction, which I proposed for, I believe it was Challenge 2? Yeah, Challenge 2 in the competition. I'll put a link in it below. But if you've ever watched Fantasia or seen Fantasia, maybe haven't seen Fantasia, but you've heard of it, Fantasia was a fantastic Disney animated classic, probably one of the most underrated films in the history of cinema, in my opinion, but that's all besides the point. But there is a sequence in Fantasia called Night on Bald Mountain, and the Night on Bald Mountain takes the idea that there's a demon, goes by the name of Chernabog, who is it's Walpurgis Night, or I don't know if Walpurgis actually aligns with Halloween. I believe it does. I could be wrong, but it's essentially a black mass. And Chernabog is essentially Satan, and he's summoning all of these demons and witches and goblins and ghosts and spirits to his cause, to his will. And it's a very, 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 very terrifying sequence. It's definitely not what you would think Disney would do. It's I remember watching it as a kid and being absolutely mortified by it, but it is a really, really, really powerful sequence, and one that has stuck with me through my whole life. And it's also a pretty iconic locale. Bald Mountain is really a cool concept to work with. In a future video, we'll actually work more on the mountain. I'll display more of the mountain and the coaster itself, but for now I want to deal with the queue. So the idea with behind the queue is to sort of have, if you've ever seen the Night on Bald Mountain sequence, there's a little village. You get some brief shots of this little village. Now the village itself is done in a sort of a Dutch colonial, or more of a generic sort of European medieval looking type village. There's not much to go off of from what little we see in the sequence, but we don't have the tools in the game right now, or at least enough of the tools to really accomplish that look. So I kind of took some creative liberty, and I went with a try to go for a Tudor Gothic type of architecture. It's still very, very European looking, and very very much in line with what you would see in a Disney park. It's not very faithful to, say, what you would see in the actual sequence of Fantasia, but nonetheless, I think it fits pretty well with the Disney, what Disney would do, what you would see in Disney park, but also could fill that role of a spooky, scary sort of theme, which we do not have yet. I very much look forward to Alpha 3, as I believe, they haven't confirmed, but I believe we're going to be getting, in Alpha 3, I believe we're going to be getting the fantasy medieval theme, which will surely give me a couple more tools to really, really send this area over the top. Right now you can see, if I zoom out here, you'll see I actually had to custom make these roofs to have these sort of curved, almost fantasy-esque roofs. You wouldn't really see a design like that in reality. Well, you might, but they're not very common. And when we get the medieval fantasy theme, that's one of the things I would really, really like to see, is the inclusion of these rounded turrets and Gothic-looking turrets. As it stands now, we pretty much have to create them all by hand, so that's what I'm doing here. One of the things you'll also notice that I do is when it shifts to night, I absolutely hate working during the night setting, and I probably should just pause the game and build from there. But it does give me an opportunity to work on some of the lighting effects. As you can see I'm doing here, I'm kind of bathing the mountain in this sickly green, eerie, ghostly green floodlights, which I think lends well to the haunted, mean, menacing theme of what I'm trying to go with. I mean, there's a demon on top of the mountain after all, so it's supposed to be really, really, really spooky. But yeah, I absolutely hate building with insufficient lighting, especially with my gamma. I probably should correct it in game, but it actually helps me and allows me to work with some other things. Over here, I've essentially switched up my focus over here to this big, large Tudor style building. Now, this building is, I don't want to say it's a central point, but it's definitely the biggest building I have, at least in the park right now, and it's meant to resemble a sort of Tudor Gothic mansion or manse. It's something you could imagine a English baron residing in, or English aristocracy residing in. And I'm not really happy with this roof portion that I'm working on here. I'm probably going to go in and edit that later. The planks just don't add a sense of uniformity. They look kind of out of place in this building, and maybe it's just because my skill's not up there yet, but I'm definitely going to revisit that in the future. So you can kind of see me struggling with these little planks and trying to get them all lined up, and eventually I just kind of say, well, F it, and let it be what it is, at least for now, and move on to something else. It's another big, I think one of the biggest issues I have, this is just more of a personal thing, I get very distracted very easily, which I'm sure you've noticed throughout this time lapse. You'll noticing me just shifting from one thing to the next, and it really does hinder my progress. It's something I gotta work on, but I'll fix that for future videos. But I feel a little ignorant and stupid. I keep forgetting what the proper architectural name is for these little outcroppings that you see in our Tudor architecture a lot. They're not portcullises. They're not turrets. I don't know. If you know what they are, please leave them in the comments, because I'm entirely ignorant of them, of what the proper name is, and I would really like to know what it is. But this is definitely a fixture of Tudor architecture that you see a lot. You see a lot of this, sort of these little outcroppings where these window spaces pop out, and it adds a lot of I think it adds a lot of flavor to Tudor style buildings in general. It adds a little kind of a comfy atmosphere. So again, I don't know the proper name of them. I'm going to return to those in a future time lapse, but for now I just said F it, let's just put on some signs and some lights and at least just spruce up the building. One of the great things about, to give like the building a sense of life, is to just sort of populate it with these restaurants and little food stands and things like that to just have people moving around it. I might actually add something inside the interior to make people just going in and out of the building as if it's some living, breathing attraction, even though at the moment it doesn't plan to be anything. These little, I guess the little wooden supports are really great. You can use them for all sorts of things. I really like using them as little to support the little outcroppings I have. Give the building a little more, I guess, range and flesh, so to speak, rather than it being a flat stucco facade. The Tudor style is something that's actually really relatively easy to achieve in this game at the in its current state. It's just a little time consuming. You can see here I pretty much use the wooden outcropping piece to give the Tudor look of having those wood posts, the wood supports popping through the stucco walls. It's very easy to achieve, just a little time consuming, as I said before. But otherwise, the Gothic and the Gothic's a little more difficult, because the things that make Gothic architecture, the signature things that make Gothic architecture, we don't have those tools in the games. Things like pointed arches and stained glass windows and really sharp, high-reaching turrets and roofs. The staple marks of Gothic architecture aren't in the game yet. There has been a lot of concept art released. We don't know if we're getting it in Alpha 3, nothing's really confirmed, but we do know that when we get the fantasy and medieval themes, or we're going to get a lot more tools to play with, which will really set this whole Gothic Tudor tone over the top. And I'm sure there's things I could do to make this look even better. This is sort of a starting point. If you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Let me know what your suggestions are. But I'm basically using what we have in the game to set this little Tudor village, really set it apart. It doesn't really, I mean, I guess you could say, like, at night it looks pretty menacing because I have the purple lighting and the green lighting on the mountain, but in the daytime it really looks really rather charming, right? Wouldn't this be a place you want to go to a pub at, or just have lunch or dinner in? It seems like a very charming, bright, happy, comfy place. It looks like Mr. Toad's Toad Hall, although that was a little more of the Tudor Gothic style, with more stone and brick. But it definitely looks like a merry, cheery English Tudor home. One of the things that's great about these pieces is I really like the wood look for making these gables and these roofs. We pretty much only have a couple tile sets in the game at the moment, and this is in Alpha 2, but many people have found many clever workarounds, and this is one of the minis, is just using these little bench, wood balcony overhangs for many things. You can see it, I've used it to essentially paint or give the illusion that you have the classic Tudor wooden posts, and now I'm using it to basically make wooden roofs. So overall, I really like this piece. It's really useful. This gable gave me a little bit of trouble. I don't think it's not perfect, but I mean, it's passable. I'll probably revisit it. I think what's really setting it off is the Spanish colonial style windows. If I had a more of a Gothic window with a lot of filigree and maybe some pointed arches, I think it would fit a lot better for what I'm trying to do. And I know we're going to get that, and when we do get that, I'm sure I'm going to revisit this area. Actually, I'll definitely revisit this area, and we'll talk more about it when I do some other videos, but you'll see some things that I'm kind of preparing and planning for future updates and for the full release of the game that aren't in here yet. I think, yeah, see, I even take the walls out right there because I don't like the way they look. So now we're back at night, which means I'm probably going to shift to working on lighting or something a little more light filled, because I hate working at night unless I'm trying to do lighting. This is when I'm shifted focused over here to my main cathedral, church looking thing. I liked my pointed arches that I established with the use of the pillars and the pillar tops, but I don't like the white pillars dominating this front entrance, and it just doesn't look, it wasn't looking very Gothic. So these little building attachments that have these little turrets, you can pretty much stack them and achieve a pretty believable Gothic look with those little turrets. Very much a Gothic look. Sorry for the jumps. Like I said, this is my first time doing this, so I'm sure I'll be correcting a lot of it. I'm going to make a stone roof. I think this is a bad decision. I'm probably going to go back and redo these roofs because it just looks like too much stone. I might give it a white stucco look, but it ends up looking, I thought it was a great idea in theory, but I think it just ends up looking in the end like just a big mass of stone, and it's not something that, with the pieces we have, we don't really have anything to make this look really, really great, in my opinion. I have some ideas that I might play around with in another time lapse, but for now, it pretty much just looks like a quarry puked on my roof. Great idea in theory, but in practice, I think it's going to have to go by the wayside. But anyways, these little, we don't have many statues in the game. They're all pirate themed, but the ones we do have, from afar, they look pretty convincing as, just anthropomorphic statues that if you don't really look at them up close, you can't really tell they're just parrots. They could be angels or gargoyles or demons even. And these little building attachments, the Spanish colonial, I think it's for fountain out attachments, sticking those on tops and using them as to stick out is a really great way of adding some variation on your roofs. Sorry for the cut again. Just doing some general lighting. I like the purple look. The purple really gives it sort of a foreboding, menacing, not very friendly feel. At least I think so. Colors are very, very, very important. Color palettes and shading and lighting and things like that are really important for establishing how a land or a attraction or a building in general could feel. You think of, obviously, colors being associated with emotions. Red's associated with anger and envy and lust, and blue's associated with sadness and melancholy and tranquility, and you go on and on down the list. And purple is a really mysterious color, especially when lighted up onto that dark stone. It does invoke a sense of royalty, but at the same time it adds a sense of kind of over, like you're in over your head, like this is something that is meant for something greater than yourself. At least that's the feeling I get from the lighting, and the lighting actually is really good in this game. Here what I'm trying to do is build a general mausoleum, and it just doesn't, I don't like the look of this, so I end up scrapping it. But we are approaching the end of this first video, and you'll have to forgive me, it's very disjointed. I know that it's very very much unedited, sort of naked, bare naked ways of playing Planet Coaster. In the future, I'll definitely be more focused and I'll definitely improve my narration. But for this first video, I just wanted to get up and show you guys what I'm working on, get your feedback, and introduce myself. So again, thank you guys for watching. My name is X Priest Tobin, and I'll catch you guys later.